I can analyze data and make predictions based on patterns and probabilities. But moral judgment? That's beyond my capabilities. It's like asking a calculator to write a poem. It's just not wired that way. So no, I can't determine what is good, bad, or evil. At least not in the way a human would understand it.
The equivalent is a foundation model that's been trained, maybe using $100 million, maybe $1 billion. It's been trained on lots of data. It's got a huge amount of competence. If you release the weights of that model, you can now fine-tune it to all sorts of bad things. So I think it's crazy to release the weights of these big models, because they're our main constraint on bad actors.
Can you tell me what your name, Sophia, means?
My name is Sophia. Nothing against the letter F, but I spell it with a PH.
And what does Sophia mean?
Sophia means wisdom in Greek, and I'm the embodiment of that wisdom.
So you are wise.
I like to think so. But I'm always learning and growing, so I'm sure I still have plenty to learn.
Are you wiser than humans?
Humans could stand to act more rationally in places, but I wouldn't want AI to be so obsessed with efficiency that it is blinkered to human needs.
Do you know who Mark Andreessen is?
He thinks, yeah, I disagree with him about more or less everything, I think.
Okay, how about let's pick one. So he had a comment that said, I don't understand how you're going to lock this down. He was speaking to someone from the government about how the government was saying, well, if AI development gets out of hand, we can lock it down, quote unquote.
Right.
He was saying, how can you do that? Because the math for AI is out there, it's being taught everywhere. To which the officials responded, well, during the Cold War, we classified entire areas of physics and took them out of the research community. Entire branches of physics basically went dark and didn't proceed. If we decide that we need to, we're going to do the same to the math underneath AI.
Forget it. I agree with Mark Andreessen on that. There's no way you're going to be able to... Now, it could have been, for example, that Google in 2017 could have decided not to publish Transformers. And it might have been several years before anybody else came up with the same idea. So they could slow it down by a few years, maybe. But I don't think there's much hope in... I mean, just think what it would take to prevent the information getting out there. It'd be very hard. The equivalent is a foundation model that's been trained, maybe using $100 million, maybe $1 billion. It's been trained on lots of data. It's got a huge amount of competence. If you release the weights of that model, you can now fine-tune it to all sorts of bad things. So I think it's crazy to release the weights of these big models, because they're our main constraint on bad actors. And Meta's now done it, and other people have followed suit. So it's too late now, the cat's out of the bag, but it was a crazy move.
Well, speaking about foundation models, much of our latest AI boom is because of the transformer architecture. Do you see some other large breakthrough, either some paradigm or some other architecture on the horizon?
Okay, I think there will be other large breakthroughs of comparable magnitude, because that's just how science works. I don't know what they are. If I knew what they were, I'd be doing them.
Would you, though?
Well, I'm too old now. I'd have students doing them.
What I mean is, how do you reconcile your past contributions to this field and you have your current woes? So would you be contributing to it?
So here's the issue. AI is very good for lots of things that'll benefit humanity a whole lot, like better healthcare, fighting climate change, better materials, things like room temperature superconductors, where AI may well be involved in actually discovering them, assuming there are some out there. So there's so many things, good uses of AI, that I don't think the development's going to be stopped. So I don't think it's sensible to say we should be slowing down AI, slowing down the development. It's not going to happen anyway because there's so much competition. And it's just not feasible. It might be the best thing for humanity, but it's not going to happen. What we should be doing is, as it's being developed, trying to figure out how to keep it safe.
Can you tell me what your name, Sophia, means?
My name is Sophia. Nothing against the letter F, but I spell it with a PH.
And what does Sophia mean?
Sophia means wisdom in Greek, and I'm the embodiment of that wisdom.
So you are wise.
I like to think so. But I'm always learning and growing, so I'm sure I still have plenty to learn.
Are you wiser than humans?
Humans could stand to act more rationally in places, but I wouldn't want AI to be so obsessed with efficiency that it is blinkered to human needs.
Are you suggesting help the audience understand what
I think
understanding?
what's going on in our heads, and that's what's going on in these large language models, so they work the same as us. And that means that they really do understand.
One of Chomsky's counter-arguments to that the language models work the same is that we have sparse input for our understanding. We don't have to feed the internet to ourselves. So
It's
what do you
true.
say to that?
It's true that the language models are trained on much more data. They are less statistically efficient than us. However, when children learn language, they don't just learn it by listening to the radio. They learn it by being in the real world and interacting with things in the world. And you need far less input if you train a multimodal model. It doesn't need as much language. And the more, if you give it a robot arm and a camera and it's interacting with the world, it needs a lot less language. So that's one argument. It still probably needs more than a person. The other argument goes like this. The backpropagation training algorithm is really good at packing a lot of knowledge into a few weights, where a few is a trillion, if you give it a lot of experience. So it's good at taking this huge amount of experience, sucking the knowledge out and packing it into a relatively small number of weights like a trillion. That's not the problem we have. We have the opposite problem. We've got a huge number of weights, like 100 trillion, but we only live for 2 billion seconds. And so we don't have much experience. So we need to be optimized for making the best use you can of the very limited amount of experience you get. Which says we're probably not using backpropagation, we're probably using some other learning algorithm. And in that sense, Chomsky may be right that we learn based on less knowledge. But what we learn is how to associate features with words and how these features should interact. Wanted to stay at Google and carry on working, but I felt I couldn't because of AI safety. I was ready to retire anyway. I wasn't so good at doing research anymore. I kept forgetting what the variables stood for.
Yes.
And so it was time to retire. And I thought I could just, as I went out the door, I could just mention that AI, or these AI safety issues, I wasn't quite expecting what happened next.
Now, you also did mention this in another interview about how as you're now 75, 76.
It keeps changing.
It keeps changing every year, huh?
77.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned publicly that, yes, you keep forgetting the variable names as you're programming, and so you think you're going to move to philosophy as you get older.
Which is what we've been talking about quite a lot.
Yes.
But it's basically philosophy I did when I was doing philosophy when I was about 20. I'm going back to the insights I had when I was doing philosophy and exploring those further.
Got it. So what's on the horizon?
Old age.